Hello and welcome to Sex in the News. We are the Siegel Brothers. Tonight we are going to be looking at first a pair of studies, one showing that 25% of Americans still oppose premarital sex, the other showing that 95% of Americans report having had premarital sex. California is considering making it illegal to remove a condom without consent, and looking at something called a Halifax project, which is about improving accessibility and just accessible sex toys and other devices for people with disabilities. So, welcome back, my brother.
Yes.
This is one interesting pair of studies.
It
right?
is.
And so exemplifies so much of what's wrong with not just clinical sexual health, but attitudinal sexual health.
Well, may I also add, it is such a clear picture of what's wrong with America.
Right.
It really
So,
characterizes how messed up Americans are.
Like we said, this is a pair of studies that just ironically fit together, right? Again, 1 in 4, 25% of Americans, according to this study, oppose premarital sex.
Right.
And this number's down from about 40% who believed
2001.
that premarital sex was wrong in 2001.
Right. And to be clear, these people in this 25% they hold this really tight, basically saying that, and again, 25% of Americans feel that sex between unmarried adults is never acceptable.
Right.
Right? No matter how committed that relationship may be, if they're not married, 1 in 4 Americans, 25%, say it is absolutely, unequivocally wrong and unacceptable. But then let's take a look at what they do. This is what they think. Now let's see what they do. And this brings us to the other study.
Yes, this comes from...
Completely independent?
Where is this research from? No, the Guttmacher Institute.
Yes, this is Guttmacher.
Yes, one of the finest clearinghouses and research centers for sexual and reproductive health in the world. And this recent study from, well, it's not so recent. It's a bit dated, but it showed that 95% of Americans had premarital sex. So talk about a classic do what I say, not what I do. Right. More than 9 out of 10 Americans, men and women alike, have had premarital sex. High rates extend to women born in the 40s, challenging perceptions that people were more chaste in the past. I remember a study from back in our Planned Parenthood days that like 81% of people reported sex before marriage in the 1950s. Or 88%.
And again, that was just reported. It's probably more like 88%.
Yeah.
If you go back to the 1850s, you'll find the same thing.
But we grew up with this, we grew up in the 60s and 70s with this message that people in the 50s was like the Donna Reed show or Father Knows Best. Nobody had sex, except heterosexual married people to make babies.
Exactly.
And it's never been, it wasn't true then, it's never been true ever.
And that value that is still promoted in this country about saving sex for marriage, that has never been the case. Right? In fact, the only time, not even the only time, it was because this whole idea of adolescent sex. People don't realize that, up until maybe 100 years ago, right? Once girls became reproductively able, they were having families.
Well, within about a year and a half, right? Because remember, menstruation, first period is like the beginning of a cycle, but...
No, it's the end of the cycle. Once she's reproductively mature. Remember, the period is the end of that cycle. But in
terms of a girl's development, when she has her first period, she typically still looks like a girl. And after that first period, with estrogen really expressing, over about a year and a half, she looks much more like a woman.
Okay, so we know that
And more
statistically-
able to not just get pregnant, but carry a full term
pregnancy.
and deliver.
Sure.
Right? So
Sure.
a 9-year-old who's having her period is certainly in no condition to have a baby.
Well,
Because
no, but it
she's
doesn't. First of all, it
9.
doesn't mean that she's not, right? And so in that cultural thing too. But I mean, yeah, you're right. But there's maybe a year difference,
Yeah.
right? You know, back in
But not
what was it?
like 25 years like now.
No, well, that's the thing. In 1850 or so, or no, maybe let's just go 1900. Let's just go to back that far. The average age girls had their first period was about 14.
Right.
The average age they were getting married and starting their families was 15.
and a half.
Yeah, exactly.
16. That's
So it
what
was
I'm
kind of
saying.
right
It
there. They
fits
were preparing.
the social custom fit our physiological development.
Right. So, you know, and even with that, you know, again, people were having sex before they were married since the invention of people and sex. Right? That's never really been a true value. So the fact that people are waiting longer to get married now, the average age of marriage is 28 to 30, but the rate of marriage has plummeted. So people just aren't doing it. So this idea of waiting till marriage, nobody ever did. Right. So again, this is a very American kind of what our dear friend Laura Riskel used to write about. I think this was a Rabbi Shmuley thing, but that term sexual schizophrenia. Right. That we say we believe this, yet we do something completely different.
You're right. Yeah.
Right? There's American sexuality.
It's a good
right there.
quote from the study's author, Lawrence Feiner from Guttmacher Institute. He says, "This is reality check research. Premarital sex is normal behavior for the vast majority of Americans and has been for decades."
Right.
So it's another one of these games of pretend.
Yes.
Remember during the George W. Bush years when we started really big time the abstinence only till marriage? And remember the qualifier that was eventually added?
Well, there were a couple. Which one?
The 29, right? These guidelines,
Yes.
these suggested guidelines, no sex until married or until you turn 29. Then go screw your brains out if you're married or not.
Exactly.
And then
Now,
those
but how does that
29-year-olds
even
know
fit?
nothing
Right.
about disease prevention or contraception.
Don't even know how that fits. You know, there's another study I remember seeing where something like, well, even in those people that waited until they got, or waited through their 20s to get married, right? 99% of those people that were waiting by the time they were 40 have all had sex. And they were not married.
Yeah.
Right? 99% having premarital sex. So
And,
again, this is another one of the things we have to get over.
Right.
Stop it.
But, developmental trends and the changing nature of adolescence, right? No offense to our Gen Z and millennial viewers, but been saying for a long time, 27 is the new 18.
Yeah.
Right? The new, what am I going to be when I grow up age? So it's kind of ironic that the majority of first pregnancies are automatically high risk.
Right.
Because a woman's 30 or older, and 150, 200 years ago, a 30-year-old woman would have already had 7, 8, 9 kids. Because that was her job.
Right. So puberty has occurred earlier than ever before, and adolescence lasts longer than ever before.
Right. Now that average age for first period, the clinical term is menarche.
Menarche,
If you're taking notes, has dropped from almost 14 to about 11.
Yep.
And again, nobody's going to argue that an 11-year-old is old enough to be someone's mother. But if she's had her first period, she can get pregnant. It's also the kind of values thing. It reminds me, remember these concepts we used to cover, I think, in ethics classes, the difference between a values conflict and a belief behavior disconnect.
Right.
So this is a good example of a values conflict. Someone would say, I believe that people should wait until they are married before they have sex. So that means you waited until, well, no, I didn't, but I believe people should.
Right.
That's a values conflict most people can live with.
Well, yeah, but there's also this ingrained
principle.
hypocrisy.
Yeah.
Right? How many people that teach these abstinence programs have ever themselves been abstinent? And that's what you just said applies to everybody that teaches kids about abstinence. If they ask, were you abstinent before you got married? Oh, no, not me, but you should, like you say.
Yeah.
So,
but the belief behavior disconnect is, a good example would be, you may remember Idaho Senator Larry Craig, the guy with the wide stance in the bathroom in the Minnesota airport, Minneapolis, tapping his foot to an undercover cop in the next stall. And of course, how adamantly, I'm not gay. I have a wife and children.
Right.
This
that's the explanation for so many guys.
Conservative Republican politician spent his whole career denying civil liberties for gays and lesbians. And again, big shocker. Right? Reaction formation much? Getting busted in a men's room.
Yeah.
Because of course, all straight guys do that.
Right. So again, as long as this is we talked about context in our previous show with our guest, but this is the context that we work in, and it gives me no joy whatsoever to know that as long as we're in this country, we'll never be out of a job.
Okay.
Right? What do we have
Our
next?
next story comes from California, which sometimes I feel like in the field of sexology is a foreign country.
Yeah.
With its own rules and customs. But this interesting proposed bill working its way through the State House.
Right. Bill 453 for those keeping score at home.
Addresses the truly disgusting behavior known as stealthing.
Yeah.
Which is when a guy stealthily removes a condom midway through intercourse without telling the partner, no less, getting consent.
Right. Now, stealthing is such a nice word. Right? It's better than sneaky, underhanded,
and
despicable.
And a form of sexual assault.
Right.
Remember the very brief and not quite so heyday of the pouch, the so-called vaginal condom, the female condom.
Right, the reality.
Right.
Ironically named.
Yeah, the reality condom, which was never popular, rustly and...
Yeah, I field tested that.
Yeah, and what'd you say? It was like a hefty bag?
Yeah.
Right? And sure enough, after that became available, we heard stories of guys putting their penis in next to the condom. And the same old bullshit. Oh, I want to feel you. I can't.
Right.
I don't like taking a shower with the raincoat on.
Yeah. Which, by the way, let's call that for what it is.
Yeah,
that's
bullshit.
It's stupid.
Shut
First of all,
the
any
fuck up.
guy that can't feel with a condom on, you need to see a urologist and a neurologist. You have a lot of problems that need to be corrected. This is a very thin, sheer piece of latex.
I mean,
it's not. It's not like putting a sweater on.
How many guys jerked off in a gym sock all through adolescence? And all of a sudden they can't feel through a micro thin. I mean, people, the older baby boomers grew up with lambskin condoms, which are disgusting and smelly and vary in thickness, but are much, much thicker than latex and are porous.
Right.
So offer little protection against viral STDs. And people still managed, right? Just like all the technologies in sexual health, drugs that can reduce HIV viral load to undetectable. All of these breakthroughs, but we usually don't think of something like condoms as a medical technology, or where do they come from? Our friends in Big Pharma, right? It's and the technology has caught up. Whether they're ribbed for her pleasure,
Right.
or so thin and stronger, that it's just a lame
right.
excuse.
And by the way, I believe the same people that made the tires that you drive on are actually the people that kind of made latex condoms. Goodyear. But let me also throw this in too. And again, this idea of, feeling and want to feel. Again, we're talking about a very thin piece. Like I said, if you have trouble feeling and getting sensation wearing a condom, get help.
Yeah.
Right? That really is obviously speaking to a medical condition. But the reality is, does wearing a condom take a little bit of sensitivity away? Yes.
Sure.
Is that a bad thing? Right? What's the benefit of that?
It's certainly great for rapid ejaculators.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, you can last a little bit longer. You can do more.
But just the most fundamental point gets missed, right? Same thing when we talk about birth control. The primary purpose is to not have to worry
Right.
About these sexual consequences,
Free up your mind.
disease or unintended pregnancy, and be more uninhibited
Right.
to immerse yourself in sexual pleasure without that voice. Don't get pregnant. You're going to get a disease. I treated a woman several years ago, had the first orgasm of her entire life at the age of 54, because growing up a good, obedient Catholic, she was terrified of getting pregnant. And it wasn't until after menopause, when she finally said, okay, I can really, really not get pregnant now, that was the first time she was able to have an orgasm and enjoy sex.
Right. So I fully support the California legislature bringing this forward, and hopefully they will pass it, because this really is a form of sexual assault.
Yeah.
It really is denying your partner the opportunity for consent. And it's not just women, this is done with men as well. So if you're wearing a condom, that's what everybody is expecting. That is what is wanted. You want to take it off, then you're just being a dick.
Yeah. And lazy, and these guys that complain, like you're saying, about sensation. The same guys that present with another made-up bullshit diagnosis, but it has an acronym, so it must be real, right? The dreaded PIED.
I had a feeling you were going to go there.
Porn-induced erectile dysfunction. These guys swear up and down that they're so broken from their porn addiction. Sidebar, ain't no such thing. That they believe that they have developed debilitating erectile dysfunction.
Right. How about learn about intimacy? Learn how to communicate and connect to another human being.
Yeah, and expand and improve the relationship with yourself and with your own penis.
Right.
Right? That mix up the repertoire, as we like to say, and broaden your sensitivity. And be turned on by your partner's pleasure. All the usual answers.
Right. So again, hopefully we'll see stealthing, as it is called. Will hopefully, at least in California, hopefully will be made illegal.
The topic was addressed in that HBO series called "I May Destroy You."
Yeah.
Which is making some waves. I think I saw the first couple episodes.
Yeah, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job with
and
that.
Our last piece for the evening, again, another really, really important topic, and as fate would have it, as we were just discussing with Bill Taverner in his brilliant sex ed lecture series, just last night, I had the pleasure of attending a lecture. I feel badly that I don't remember the presenter's name, but it was on making sex ed accessible. And just another of many areas that even among sexology professionals, there's a discomfort and often a tendency to want to desexualize.
Oh, absolutely.
Children, seniors, and
the disabled.
People with some kind of disability. Right. And, they're still humans, and humans are still sexual beings.
Right. Now, one of the things that I've been doing for a couple of years, actually many years now, again, as part of sex education and work, because, again, we have to work with everybody because everybody needs this education. But I was doing trainings and working with people on, number one, training personal care assistants, assisted sex. We were doing that kind of stuff, and then some of the chairs and the pillows, and actually some people actually have to have their full bodies. They need the assistance, literally moving their bodies in and out. I would talk about how you can strap a dildo to
or any kind of toy,
or any kind of sex toy to somebody's hand and arm, because they may not have
even an
the
amputation
strength.
stump.
Absolutely,
right.
Adapting kitchen appliances and all of that.
Remember,
so here,
what was Bill Murray with the spatula?
Yeah, that's right. And
100 years ago.
Yes. That army movie, that comedy, that Harold Ramis, brilliant movie.
Yeah.
So here's a company now that is addressing that need, that they're actually making sex toys that are for people who have a variety of disabilities.
And they've got such an awesome name, Venus Envy.
Yes.
Right? A lot of people are not aware of how many of our sexual terminology are nods to Greek or Roman gods, right? So, like, for example, the word erotic comes from Eros, the Roman god of love. The Greek god was...
Venus.
No, Venus was a chick. Venus was a goddess.
Oh, that's right. Aphrodite and Venus.
Venus was the Roman
Eros
Aphrodite,
and
Cupid.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Aphrodite, like aphrodisiac, was the Greek goddess, and Venus.
Venus, as in venereal disease.
That's right, yeah. Before we called them STDs, way back in the day, they used to be referred to VD, which meant venereal disease. And even well into my career as a sexuality educator, I just always assumed that word was some kind of awkwardly veiled crotch reference. And then I remember I was just reading something, and I came upon it that it actually refers
diseases
to
of Venus.
Or love diseases. Some circles, they used to refer to them as social diseases.
Right.
As if someone
because
was
you can't say
being...
sex. That was in a time where you couldn't even say toilet paper in public. You had to say TP or bathroom tissue. You certainly couldn't say tampons. That's where we got sanitary napkins.
Sanitary napkin. I remember checking into the hotel room at the Windsor and seeing those envelopes in the bathroom. Think, I don't see any napkins around here. There's probably 5 or 6.
So the Halifax project is just a really good thing, and it's being coordinated by the Tetra Society of North America. So we're definitely glad to see that. Hope this really goes through. Wish you well. This is such a needed thing for people. Adaptation. That's the project. Is called Adaptations for Accessible Sex Practices.
Project. Right.
Excellent.
Way to go. A lot of people would probably be a little squicked, a little uncomfortable at the thought of that kind of assistance like you talked about. But I remember hearing about that private duty nurse that worked for a wealthy man with cerebral palsy, and how he would have dates, sometimes women also with CP or other disabilities, and she would help them out of their clothes and get them out of their wheelchairs, of course, and help them disrobe and position their bodies on the bed to whatever they felt like or what worked. Then leave the room, leave them with privacy, and they would have a bell that they'd ring when they were finished, and she would come in and clean up and get them clothed and back in their wheelchairs. And like I said, so many people would go, ew, but I thought it was the most dignified and honoring, and what a gift to be able to give to somebody, right? Like hospice nurses, there's got to be wings on their back.
Absolutely.
Under that.
Absolutely. So good news. Like to hear that.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Well, that's our stories for this week, and we're sticking to them.
Okay, and for our final piece, we like to end on a segment that we call Poetic Justice.
Mm-hmm. Right? We get the opportunity to call out hypocrisy and get to feel good about it.
Indeed, yes. And today we have what I think is one of the highest levels of sexual hypocrisy. Mm-hmm. So we want to call out Dr. William Weaver, who is a Presbyterian pastor in, I believe, Elizabeth, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Right? I'll just read you the headline from this particular article.
This is one of those stories.
Right? New Jersey minister accused of using oral sex and gems on men during exorcism. Right? Apparently what this guy was doing, he did this to several men. He would, first of all, groom them, as most abusers do. And in his way, he would groom them into accepting that they are filled with evil. And that he would have to exercise this evil.
He needed to extract evil from these men.
He would have these men lay down on a bed, naked, instruct them to be perfectly still, perfectly quiet. They were not allowed to do anything, or they would mess it all up. Mm-hmm. He would put crystals and stones all around them. And then apparently his MO was, the first thing he would do is pretty much get on top of the guy that's laying on that bed and mouth to mouth. And one guy described it as he would then work his tongue into my mouth and move it all around my mouth, saying he was looking for something. He was looking for the evil that was lurking around his tonsils, apparently.
Oh, boy.
He then would proceed to performing oral sex on these men. And apparently his cover was when they ejaculated in his mouth, he would then spit into a plastic bag, and in a way that he would put like pieces of plastic and pieces of metal into that bag and then show it to these guys. See, look, here's the evil bits that I just took out of you. And he's been doing this for years. Right? So again, to me, that kind of clergy abuse, more than any other kind of abuse, is one of the highest levels of betrayal, because people are putting their absolute trust in these people, and this is what they are doing with it.
I mean, I can't help think of that long legacy of altar boys in Catholic churches, and how families would be made to feel like they're so special, the most valued members of the congregation, and what an honor. We're going to take your son because you're such a wonderful family.
And the church will adopt your son. That's the honor.
He'll live over there and work with the priest. And,
And a lot of people don't realize that the whole thing with altar boys really came about to protect their secret.
Wow.
Right? Because the bishops and the priests were abusing all these young boys, and every night when they went home to their families, eventually it dawned on them that, they risk revealing the secret. And then this pseudo-honor was developed.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, that was explained to me by a priest when I had asked the question, because I studied comparative religion, and I never found anything to justify it, and I'll never forget his response.
Nothing religious.
Right? Yeah, nothing religious. And I'll never forget his response. I asked this priest, and I said, can you tell me what the etiology of altar boys is? Because I've never been able to find any justification for it. And he just kind of looked at me, and he said, what you're probably thinking is correct. And then got the whole story. So again, for this ultimate betrayal of trust and abusing all of these young men, to Dr. William Weaver in Elizabeth, New Jersey, we salute you as this week's Poetic Justice. Yeah, got another one back there too. Like many things that you do, it's sort of behind the veil.
So that's going to do it for this week's Sex in the News. We air Sundays, so please keep an eye out and like and share and
please
comment.
Subscribe, and definitely comment. Love to hear from you. And if there's anything that you know that we should talk about, and a news item that you're aware of, please share that with us too. We'd love to hear from you.
See you next week.
Right.
We are the Siegel Brothers.
Yes.
And this has been Sex in the News.
Stay well.